Hello everyone, I am Simone and welcome to my channel. This is the second episode of our series The History of Astrology, partially inspired by my father-in-law's book and On the Ninth Day, God Created Astrology. Link in the description. In this journey we explore how humans across time try to read the will of the cosmos and how those ancient beliefs shape the astrology we know today. Last time we explored Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization and the first astrological traditions. Today we travel west to the land of the Nile, where the rhythm of the heavens was tied to that of the river and where the gods themselves were written in the stars. Egyptian civilization flourished for over 3 millennia, from around 3100 BCE until the Roman conquest occurred in 30 BCE. The annual flooding of the Nile, the rotation of the seasons, and the position of the sun and stars were all deeply intertwined in their daily life. The Egyptians saw the world as a harmonious whole. The earth, the heavens, and the underworld were all linked in a cosmic balance maintained by Maat, the goddess of truth and order, and allegory of the principle of truth, balance, and cosmic harmony. To understand why Egyptians watched the skies so carefully, we must step inside their temples and myths. As said, at the heart of their worldview was Maat. It was a sacred duty of the pharaoh, their ruler, to uphold Maat, not just on earth, but also in the heavens. The gods form a vast and interconnected pantheon. Among these, the most important were Ra, the sun god, sailing his solar barque across the sky by day and through the underworld by night. Osiris, lord of the afterlife, fertility and resurrection, tied to the cycles of crops and the floating Nile. Isis, the goddess of magic and motherhood, linked with Sirius and protector of the dead. Horus, falcon-headed sky god, whose right eye was the sun and left eye the moon, patron of kingship. Thoth, ibis-headed god of wisdom, writing, and lunar cycles, who measured the calendar and recorded the deeds of gods and men. Hathor, goddess of love, beauty, music, and joy, associated with the planet Venus. Nut, sky goddess arching over the earth, swallowing the sun at dusk and giving birth to it each dawn. Geb, earth god, lying beneath Nut, separated from her by Shu, the god of air. Amun, the creator and supreme leader of gods, later fused with Ra as Amun-Ra, the king of the gods. Anubis, jackal-headed god of mummification and protector of graves, guiding souls through the afterlife. Bastet, feline goddess of home, fertility and protection, often linked with the gentle aspect of the sun. Sekhmet, lion-headed goddess of war, healing and divine retribution, feared for her fiery breath. Khonsu, youthful moon god, patron of time, travel, and healing. Ta, god of craftsmen and creation, taught to bring the world into being through thought and speech. Temples were built as microcosms of the universe. Their architecture mirrored creation myths. Their ritual reenacted the sun's journey and the eternal battle between order and chaos. Observing the heavens was a religious duty, a way to ensure that Maat endured. While the Egyptians are often remembered for their monumental buildings, temples, and solar worship, they also developed a distinctive astrological tradition. Unlike Mesopotamian astrology, however, which from very early on produced detailed omen lists tied to specific celestial events, Egyptian astrology began with a more ritual and calendrical focus. The foundation of their system was the Decans, 36 groups of stars that rose consecutively on the horizon throughout the year. Each decan corresponded to a 10-day period, forming the backbone of the Egyptian calendar. Priests used the rising of these decans not only to keep time at night, but also to mark favorable or unfavorable days for religious ceremonies, agricultural work, and royal events. Over time, this decanal system evolved into something closer to personal astrology. But the Middle Kingdom existed from 2055 to 1650 BCE. Star clocks and tables were inscribed in tombs, allowing the deceased to navigate the afterlife and to align themselves with the cosmic cycles. The idea was not yet about birth charts in the Mesopotamian sense, but about situating human life within the rhythms of the gods' celestial order. Mesopotamian influence began to seep in during the late period, from 664 to 332 BCE, particularly after Egypt fell under Assyrian and later Persian control. The Babylonians had already developed mathematical models for predicting planetary positions and the sophisticated zodiac. Egyptian priests began integrating these ideas, mapping Mesopotamian zodiac signs into their own star law and blending them with their decanal system. By the Ptolemaic era, after Alexander the Great's conquest in 332 BCE, the fusion of Egyptian and Mesopotamian traditions was complete, giving birth to horoscopic astrology, the system of birth charts and planetary interpretation that would later spread to Greece and Rome. This blending created a rich hybrid. The spiritual, cyclical view of the Egyptians joined with the predictive, mathematically precise approach of the Babylonians. In the temples of Dendera and Hesna, ceilings were painted with elaborate zodiac wheels, planetary symbols, and decanal figures. Here, a visual record of two great civilizations' astrological wisdom intertwined. The development of astrology in Egypt was a process spanning millennia, closely related with the various phases of the land's long history. Let us now explore its main aspects. Egyptian history began with the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under King Narmer, around 3100 BCE. This was the dawn of the early dynastic period, when the foundations of Egyptian religion, kingship, and cosmic observation were laid. From the very start, astronomy and religion were inseparable. The alignment of temples, the timing of festivals, and even the pharaoh's coronation ceremonies were influenced by celestial cycles. One star in particular commanded their devotion. It was Sopdet, which we call Sirius. Its heliacal rising, when it first appeared on the horizon just before dawn, after a period of invisibility, announced the annual flood of the Nile River. This was not merely a matter of survival. It was a cosmic promise that life would return. So important was this stellar event that it anchored the Egyptian civil calendar. 365 days divided into 12 months of 30 days, plus 5 epagomenal days for the birthdays of the gods. In the Old Kingdom, Egypt reached the monumental heights, literally. 2670 BCE, under the 3rd dynasty pharaoh Djoser, architect Imhotep built the step pyramid at Saqqara, aligning it carefully to cardinal directions. The Great Pyramid of Cheops, who reigned from about 2580 to 2560 BCE in the 4th dynasty, is aligned so precisely north-south and east-west that some researchers believe it reflects the stars of Orion's belt, linked to Osiris, lord of the afterlife, and to Thoban, the name that designated the pole star at the time. Inside tombs, star clocks painted on ceilings recorded the rising of Decans that, as explained earlier, formed the backbone of Egypt's earliest astrological system. These were used to measure time for religious rituals, especially in solar temples dedicated to Ra, the sun god, at places like Abu Ghurab. After a period of political turmoil, Egypt was reunited under the 11th and 12th dynasty. Pharaohs such as Senusret III, who reigned from 1878 to 1839 BCE, built a highly centralized state. Astronomer priests in cities like Thebes refined astronomical observations, noting also the position of bright planets. The planets became associated with gods. Jupiter was Horus the Elder, Saturn was Osiris, Mars was Horus the Red with a warlike aspect, Venus was Hathor or Isis, and Mercury was Thoth. The temple at Heliopolis, dedicated to Ra, became a center of solar theology, where priests developed the idea that the king himself was the son of Ra, a divine being whose reign was part of the cosmic order, or Maat. This concept ties celestial regularity to political stability. The New Kingdom, stretching from 1550 to 1070 BCE, was Egypt's golden age, with an empire stretching from Nubia to Syria. Pharaohs like Thutmose III, Amenhotep III, and Ramses II commissioned vast temples that were not only religious centers, but also astronomical observatories. At Karnak, the great temple of Amun was aligned so that at the winter solstice, the rising sun illuminated the sanctuary. At Luxor, the temple's axis ensured that during the Opet festival, celebrated during the flooding of the Nile, the setting sun shone directly into its innermost shrine. Tomb ceilings from this period, such as those in the Valley of the Kings, depict the goddess Nut stretched across the heavens, swallowing the sun each evening and giving birth to it each morning. Star maps and lists of decans appear in these tombs, serving both as cosmological guides and as magical aids for the king's journey through the afterlife. One extraordinary figure of this era was Amenhotep, son of Hapu, a scribe and architect who designed solar alignments for temples and was later deified. His work shows how deeply architecture, astronomy, and religion were intertwined in Egyptian tradition. The late period, from 664 to 332 BCE, saw Egypt under foreign domination, first by the Assyrians, then by the Persians. Yet Egyptian astronomy and astrology didn't vanish. Instead, it absorbed influences from Mesopotamia. Egypt's astronomy absorbed Babylonian innovations, mathematical planetary predictions, and the zodiac. By the 30th dynasty, under native pharaohs like Nectanebo II, who reigned from 360 to 343 BCE, temple ceilings, such as those at Dendera, were painted with elaborate zodiacal symbols. That marked the beginning of a more recognizably astrological Egypt, blending Greek constellations with Egyptian deities. When Alexander the Great conquered Egypt in 332 BCE, he founded the city of Alexandria, which quickly became a center of learning. Under the Ptolemaic dynasty, founded by Ptolemy, a Macedonian general under Alexander the Great, and then ruled Egypt from 305 to 330 BCE, Greek and Egyptian knowledge merged in unprecedented ways. Here stood one of the greatest centers of knowledge of the ancient world, the Library of Alexandria. For centuries, the Library of Alexandria housed works from Babylon, Greece, and Egypt, allowing scholars like Claudius Ptolemy to create the Tetrabiblos, a foundational text of Western astrology. Though Ptolemy lived in the 2nd century CE, during the Roman rule, his work relied on centuries of Egyptian and Mesopotamian observations. By this time, astrology in Egypt had evolved into a system of personal horoscopes using planetary positions, something unthinkable in the days of pharaohs Narmer or Cheops. Egypt's contribution to astrology was not in inventing horoscopes, but in weaving the heavens into every part of life, from temple alignments and agricultural calendars to royal ideology and funerary rites. Their focus on cycles, order, and the eternal return of celestial patterns influenced not only Greek thought, but also later Islamic and medieval European astrology. In our next episode, we'll move into the classical world of Greece, where philosophers, mathematicians, and mystics took the star lore of Egypt and Mesopotamia and transformed it into the astrology we recognize today. As usual, if you found this video interesting, remember to like and share it, and subscribe to my channel. Until the next time.